Hi, Nick Vince here. This week on the Chattering Hour, I'm joined by a Diane of horror films, Barbara Crampton. We talk about her early work on 1980s cult classics Re-animator and From Beyond, and more recent films such as You're Next, an experience which led her to taking on the producer and starring roles in the smash hit of this year's South by Southwest Film Festival, Jacob's Wife. Up next on the Chattering Hour, Barbara Crampton. And we're back with my special guest, Barbara Crampton. Barbara started her career on TV in The Days of Our Lives, and she's had long-running roles in The Young and the Restless and The Bold and the Beautiful. Her films include We Are Still Here, Chopping Mall, and Road Games. And in 2020, she was awarded a Rondo Award for her Fangoria magazine column, Scene Queen. Barbara, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. So I wanted to take us all the way back to your beginning, if we may. I understand you were born in New York, but grew up in Vermont.
Right.
So what was your childhood like?
Wow, that's a big question. There was a lot going on in my childhood. My father was a concessionaire with fairs and carnivals, so we traveled a lot in the summertime with a fair circuit.
Right.
And I grew up on a carnival lot playing games and sleeping in boxes with stuffed animals and riding the rides and eating fried bread dough and, just sort of being on my own, being a rapscallion kid.
Cool. So when did that end?
I'd say when I was about 13 was the
Right.
last time that I went out on the road with my father.
Right.
Yeah, and I think perhaps he was a bit of a showman,
Right.
with on the midway with this game that he had, the Crazy Ball birthday game. And so he would have to entreat people walking by to come and spend all the money at his game. So he would tell a lot of jokes and just, engage people in conversation based on what they were wearing or who they were with. And I potentially got my love of acting just from watching him.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then you went on to study at Castleton State College in Vermont and graduated
Mhm.
with a Bachelor of Arts in Theatre.
Yes.
Yeah. So was stage your original intention? Was that what really drew you to performing?
No, I don't know. I don't know if I knew what I wanted to do back then. I did grow up watching Dark Shadows, so potentially that would portend what my life would be like. And I really loved Night Gallery and The Outer Limits and things like that. But I also loved the theater and I love stage. And
Right.
I really, that's really all we had at the college that I went to. And I do think it gave me, like a lot of the English actors, I think it gave me a good foundation
Right.
in character work and filling up the space with your intention that you want to force on the other characters that are in the play or in a movie with you, and just to have that, it just felt like ballet one in a way,
Right.
of getting that classical training of doing theater. And I moved to New York and I thought, well, maybe I'll do theater. I didn't really know,
Right.
but I actually did King Lear at the American Theater of Actors, and I played Cordelia in that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I was taking classes at Herbert Berghoff Studios, and just doing workshops and things. But it was when I met somebody who was a movie of the week producer. His name, I don't even know if he's around anymore. I looked him up a few years ago. His name is Paul Pompian, and he was a
Right.
friend of a friend. And he we had this thing called Movies of the Week in America, and he was the producer of Movies of the Week. And I met him, and he said, Barbara, 75% of the work that you do in theater, you don't really get paid for. You don't get paid very much for. And 75% of the work you're going to do in film, you're going to get paid for. I think you should move to Los Angeles. And it was really him saying that a light bulb went off. And I thought, you know what? He could be right. I don't know. But here I am in my early 20s and thinking, why not? I mean, I'd been to California before on the road with my dad with the carnivals, and I really liked California. I liked the weather. And so I moved out there just a few months later with a girlfriend. I drove across country with her. She only lasted about 6 months and then she moved back.
Right.
But I stayed. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Do you remember what your first professional job was once you got to Los Angeles?
Yes, actually, that gentleman, Paul, introduced me to my commercial agent. And I did a couple of commercials. I don't think that was my first job. I think I got that afterwards. But my first professional job was the first audition I ever had in my entire life professionally. And it was for this soap opera called Days of Our Lives.
All
So I went
right.
in and I read for that, and I got what they talk about in the business as a callback. So I got a couple of callbacks, and then they did a test screening with me and the lead actor that I was going to be working opposite. And they called me 3 weeks later and said I had the job. So I did that show for about a year. And that was my introduction to being on screen, really.
Wow. Wow. What did you immediately take to performing in television? Was it just
No, it was really hard for me. It was really hard because I think I was very big on that show. I was used to being on the stage, and I hadn't as of yet taken any film classes.
Ah,
And everybody kept saying to me on the set, do less. Do exactly what you're doing, but do less, do less. And I was like, do less? What does that mean? So I was just doing my version of do less. I figured it out after a while, but it's funny because if I go back to the beginnings of my acting training, and subsequently I did take film classes, but they talk about the energy flowing through your body is the same, but the aperture through which it flows is smaller. So, it's like when you're acting on camera or on film, it's just, you do give a little bit less. And then when you're on the stage, you've really got to show people what you're doing so they really see it. So I had to learn how to modulate my instincts
right,
and just keep it smaller.
right, right, right. Yeah, you
It was a
remind
good education on a soap opera, though, because I could do that there.
right, right. So I mean, because you're filming a new episode every week or
Well, it's every day.
almost every
They do 80 pages a day, but your character isn't always on
right,
every single day. If you have a heavy storyline, you might be on 5 days a week, but then other times you might only be on once or twice.
right,
So it would vary every week. Yeah.
right, 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 right. It sounds incredibly intense.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was at times, a lot of dialogue, but
Because then, I mean, your first screen role, I believe, is in 1984's Body Double,
mhm.
directed by Brian De Palma. Was that just a casting, or were you
Yeah,
recommended?
no, I auditioned for that, and what's left in the film is only one scene, and I don't really say very much. But when I got the role, there was 3 scenes in the movie with Craig Wasson, and the night before I was to show up, I guess the casting director called, or my agent called, or somebody called me and said, "Oh, we've cut all the other scenes in the movie, and now you only have this one scene where you're having an affair with another guy and Craig Wasson, and he finds you. Do you still want to do it?" Oh, and I thought, geez, this is Brian De Palma. How can I say no? So I said, okay, I'll do it. Yeah.
So it was just, were you literally just on set for one day?
Yeah, just one
Yeah,
day, a
yeah,
very long day, because he's notorious for doing a lot of takes of everything. So I think we did 60 or 70 takes of every angle. I mean, it was crazy. But I
wow.
guess if you have 9 months to shoot a movie, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't terribly successful when it first came out, but has become more popular
Mm.
since. I was curious, because I know you've done horror conventions.
Hmm.
Do you find fans of the film? Do you get people asking you to sign autographs from that movie?
Oh, not so much,
Right,
really. Surprisingly, I think it's more of a thriller in a way, and I think that's a pretty broad genre that a lot of people
right,
like. It's very mainstream,
right,
and Brian is kind of mainstream. I more often have people asking me to sign things for Re-animator or From Beyond, and some of the new stuff as well.
right,
But they go back to these classic horror films that I was in the 80s.
right. No, that's because it was Re-animator I wanted to move on to next.
Yeah.
Again, just a casting or
Hmm. Yeah, the girl who originally had the part, I don't know who she was. Um, I hadn't auditioned for it as of yet. She got the role, but then her mother read the script, and we were all quite young at the time, and her mother said, "I don't think you should do this movie. This is too, risque or too freaky, to, this horror movie. What do you want to do that for?" So they had another casting session, and I was called in as a replacement. Um, I read with Jeffrey Combs and Bruce Abbott, and we all got along quite well. And I didn't know they had the parts at the time. And I remember thinking how great they were in the audition and hoping they would get the parts because they were so amazing and so wonderful. And I think I was there maybe for 3 to 4 hours. I read almost by the end of the day, I had read almost every scene that I had with the guys. And Stuart kept calling me in, and working with us all and giving us direction. It was really a fun audition. I remember thinking, oh, this is great. This feels kind of like theater because he came from the theater and this was his first movie. Um, and when I did get the part, we rehearsed the whole film for about 3 weeks. And I thought to myself, this is great. This is what they do in films. They also rehearse them. Of course, this never happened to me since. No. Uh, but we rehearsed the crap out of every single scene in that film.
do you
Maybe
have a
that's why it's so good. I don't know.
it's brilliant. I love it. I was watching it again the other day. I've seen it before, but I was just going to watch it. It is just fun. And I think
Yeah.
you've got a really nice role from an actor's perspective, I think, in that
Hmm.
she's there kind of outside this madness, this voice of reason,
Hmm.
as she watches her boyfriend get sucked in by this mesmeric guy who played it. What? So you must have read the whole script during that
Hmm.
audition. Then, in that case,
Yeah.
did
Oh,
you
yeah.
did you have similar qualms about taking this on, or it was just
I really didn't. I read it and I thought it was fun. It seemed like a fun movie to me, and it seemed comedic on the page.
mhm,
And it was also a really good role. You're right. She had an arc to her. Something, terrible happened, and she had a
mm,
lot of emotional qualities inherent in the role. And as a young actor, somebody offers you a role, and I mean, I didn't expect that I would be working in the horror genre for the rest of my life, but at the time, it could have been a comedy and a great role, and I would have said yes, and I think I just got lucky that I was in that part. But yeah, I mean, there's some definitely risque parts to the movie and over the top gore and chills and scares. And I don't know, maybe growing up on the carnival a lot, I just had a different barometer for that kind of material. Like it didn't scare me
right,
or freak me out, or it wasn't adverse to anything I
right,
held ideologically or anything. Yeah.
right, right. And you mentioned that Stuart Gordon came from a theatrical background, and you had all this wonderful rehearsal time. You also
Mm.
then went on to do From Beyond with Stuart Gordon and with Jeffrey Combs again, and again a much meatier and quite an amazing outfit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably to date one of the best characters I've ever been able to play. She was so multidimensional, and she went into the beyond, so multidimensional. Um, and just there was a lot of layers to her. She was a repressed psychiatrist and a doctor, and she was investigating something. She was being a helpmate to Jeffrey Combs's character, and then something inside of her blossoms, and she becomes more of a sexual being, and then she goes mad at the end of the film. I've never seen a trajectory like that in a film offered to me really since. It's one of the best roles I've ever had.
Right. So what do you feel about the way women are portrayed uh, in films, in horror films,
Mhm.
generally speaking?
Well, I think things are getting better. I mean, I do think that there's an essence of women being the more vulnerable character, or supposedly the more vulnerable, gender. And in movies, and frequently in horror movies, there's a villain and
Mhm.
there's a hero, and something or someone has to be saved. And I think it was quite natural in storytelling to use a woman in that way, to elucidate that fear, and to say this is something worth fighting for, and to show the vulnerabilities. And sometimes that would lean into physical vulnerabilities as well. I do think that, especially in the 80s, most of those scripts were written by men. So a lot of it was
Mm,
like what a man wants to see. And I do believe that we've evolved over the last number of years, and we're telling stories that are a little bit more sensitive to exploiting women, if you will.
right,
So I feel
right.
like things have gotten a lot better. I have no fear about nudity on set, or in movies or anything at all. But the way that you use that, I think, has to illuminate the story, and not just be for, oh, here's something to titillate you. I think it's better if it's inherent in the story. I
Yeah.
think that's a better use of that device.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll probably come back to that a little bit later on when we talk about some of your more recent stuff. But what I think, watching From Beyond and Re-animator back to back, I was thinking there's an awful lot of male nudity in these films as well.
Mhm.
You've got
Well, I think Stewart was equal opportunity in that respect, and he tried to be even more so than some of the guys weren't as maybe as compliant with him as I was. But he famously staged. He was part of the Organic Theater Company in Chicago. A naked Peter Pan, or maybe that was in college. I think that was in college, and he got kicked out of school for that, for staging a naked Peter Pan. His wife was part of that as well, and he just he wanted to go as far as you can go
right,
in all of the writing, and there was some shock value definitely in his work.
right,
And it was on all levels, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. He was always trying to really push you and really shock you.
right,
So it's not surprising those elements are in his work throughout.
right, right. So you kind of alluded to earlier on that you've done an awful lot of horror. I mean, you did Castle Freak, Space Truckers, Jolly Bound Productions, Pulse Pandas, Puppet Master, Traces. Did you feel that you were being typecast and this is now what the genre
Hmm.
you are going to be doing in films?
I guess so. I think everybody's typecast. I mean, you're typecast in your work. If you're a banker, I mean, my husband is a bond trader, and
Right,
that's who he is, and that's what he gets hired for. And he's had many different jobs as a bond trader for many different companies. But they're not going to hire him as a dentist. Maybe he'll get some training as a dentist. Maybe if he wants to do that, but this is what he does.
right,
And yes, this aspect of the business, as far as horror movies, I'm sure I got typecast,
right.
because of the popularity of Re-animator and From Beyond. It never really bothered me. I don't think that I lost any roles because of it. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but I also had a running career with soap operas, 12 years on 4 different soaps, and I spent 6 years on The Young and the Restless, which in its heyday was pretty popular in
Right.
America,
Yeah.
and I had a regular job for 6 years. So that was great. I was probably typecast, doing soap operas because they kept offering me those.
Right.
Um, and I have to say I didn't really realize that I was a horror movie actress until I came back after taking a break and did Your Next in 2011.
Right.
And I saw the fandom was just quite wild at the time, and people were asking me to go to um, conventions, and there was just I wasn't really on any social media at the time. But after I did Your Next, all the people I worked with said, "Oh, you really need to be on social media because that's how all the young people keep in touch now. We're not going to be calling you on the phone or getting together. We're going to be tweeting to you." And I was like, "Oh, tweeting to me. Okay, I'll join the social media platform." So I did, and then the whole world of the fandom opened up to me, and I went, "Oh, that movie did so well. It sold so well, and it brought me back in a way that opened my eyes to the fact that I belonged to a club that I didn't realize I belonged to, that I really was part of the horror community. I wasn't just an actor who had acted in some horror films, but I was part of this greater community of journalists, of fans, of other actors going to starting to go to conventions more. At the time, I met all these amazing people when I would go to the conventions, all these other actors who I grew up and watched their movies and I loved. And I thought to myself, oh, this is what I do. This is where I belong. So I decided that at that time to rededicate myself to my career and the horror genre specifically. And yeah.
Right. 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 Yeah. And you mentioned You're Next, and that kind of, so this was a kind of an epiphany moment for you.
Mhm.
What was it you mentioned about the social media stuff, but was there any other, were there any other aspects of the kind of the independent filmmaking thing that
Mhm.
you came to appreciate or realize?
I did actually, and that's a great question because working on Your Next with Adam Wingard, he was not only a director, but he was also a cinematographer and an editor. And working with Amy Simons, who was also on the film, she was an actress, a producer, a writer. Ty West was a filmmaker, director, producer, writer. Joe Swanberg was writing his own films, making them, shooting them himself, and selling them for distribution. Back in those days, he was making movies for, I don't know, $20,000 and selling them for $40,000. And he would keep doing this. And I realized that when I was a young actor, I kind of stayed in my lane. I just waited for the phone to ring. And if somebody called me, great. If I had an audition, awesome, I'm there. But these people were creating content and working together for themselves. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to come back into the business and not necessarily competing with these people, but doing the same thing that they're doing and having the kinds of success that they're having, sure, I have a wealth of something behind me, but moving forward, do I just want to be an actor? I mean, maybe, but what if I could do something else? And I didn't think at the time that I really wanted to go into directing, but I liked the idea of how these people were all working together. So I thought, well, maybe producing would be a good avenue for me to go into. And I just started sort of following what the producers on that movie were doing, Keith Calder and Jessica Wu, and they were working their way up project by project, working with different people that, you know, people that were helping them to just grow and elevate by each project. And I thought that's how these guys are doing it. They're selling films now at film festivals, and that's how the movies are getting out there. When I was younger, the movie had built-in distribution. You didn't make it unless you had a pre-sale and somebody was telling you, oh, here's the money, and we're going to put it out at a certain time. This is when it's coming out. Now people were just making movies and making them as cheaply as possible, getting them to film festivals, and then selling them there. And I started going to the film festivals with Your Next. And so all of that sort of coalesced into me feeling like, okay, if I'm going to come back, I really don't want to be that person that sits around and waits for the phone. I really love storytelling. I really love the work. It's really about the work for me and about characters and understanding the human condition and illuminating why we do the things we do. And so that was one of my thoughts 10 years ago, was to kind of get into producing. And just even when you think about things, I believe that opportunities arise for you to take more chances. And I did with a couple of people and a couple of projects, and things started to, come my way that I could work on in that capacity. I actually had one movie that I'm still trying to make today called The Wildness, but I got it set up at a big company, and we were in development for 2 years on that. We haven't made it yet. Now we have the rights back and we're working with another company. But since that time, I made a film called Beyond the Gates with Jackson Stewart, and I was an actor in that and produced that, and we did quite well with it. And then started working on some other films.
Right. What do you think, or what do you find, having taken on the new role of being a producer, what do you find the greatest challenge in that new role?
I think it's a lot of the writers that I'm working with, or when scripts come in, I feel like they really need a lot of help and guidance and direction. And I think that the script is the most important thing. And I do feel like even 10 years ago, it was easy to make mistakes in the writing and to just keep learning and then building up project by project. But I feel like now you only get a couple of chances. And if you don't put out a good movie, it's really hard to raise the money for your projects. And so I feel like there are a few people that have done it really well. Like Mike Flanagan has worked his way up, and now he's, doing really well in television. And every movie that he's done is really, he's a great writer, and he, uh, his material and his casting and he's a great director. That's really worked for him. But I feel like the story is the most important thing. And what I tell people is let's really work on your script a little bit more. Let's really make it the best that it can be and develop it. And then that takes time. And it can take months. It can take years, depending on where you're at. I mean, I read scripts that come in sometimes and they're amazing and it's wonderful. And it's like, I wouldn't change anything, but there's very few of those. So I feel like that's the one thing that is the hardest, is working with new young writers. And I'm not a writer myself. I'm only giving them my feedback.
Right.
And so I'm not the end all be all, like it should be this way. But if I bring up questions and I ask questions about things and the writers need to work on it, it can take them a long time because a lot of the people that I'm working with are young people, and it can just take them a while to really hone their skills and really get the script in the best shape that it needs to be to compete in this environment.
Right. So what do you think, do you have a piece of advice for any aspiring writer who's sitting down saying, I've got this great idea. Film is the format for this particular story. Got me software. I've read all the books, Save the Cat, whatever. What's the first piece of advice you think you can give to an aspiring film screenwriter?
There's a few things I would say. Keep it simple. But the characters have to be people that you identify with and you have empathy for, especially in the horror genre, because if something terrible is going to happen to somebody, you have to care. So keeping it simple, but also telling a story where you care about the characters, you have to put some information in there. So that's hard. That seems like a juxtaposition and a duality. And that's really hard to do. So that's the first couple of things. Keep it simple, but keep have your characters have empathy.
Right.
The other thing is that film is visual. So you've got to write in visual stuff. You can't just write people talking and moving from room to room talking. There has to be visual stuff happening, or else, it's a play, really. And also, I would say in today's marketplace, from what I know about what the salespeople tell me, is that something scary sells well internationally. And I tell this to people all the time. People can write wonderful characters of somebody in peril and a hero and overcoming some tragic or horrible event or crisis. And it can have catharsis and it can have, wonderful meaning. But especially in the horror genre, if it's not scary, it's not going to sell well internationally, because culturally, the thing that really transfers well is fear. It's like we all understand fear. And a psychologist friend of mine once said to me, we make more decisions based on fear than we do on love. So it's quite a profound emotion to deal with. And the horror genre deals with it like no other genre. And that is something that transfers in any language. So many times it's, there'll be movies that'll do so well in America or in England or Australia, but they won't transfer to the other territories where they don't speak our language because there's cultural differences and they don't, it's hard to quite get that, those character quirks and things. That's why I say keep it simple but empathetic and make it scary. So that those are the three: simple,
Right.
empathetic, and make it scary, because everybody can relate to being scared. And
Right.
how do you write a screenplay that's scary? I don't know. When I read one, I go, oh, this is scary. Oh my God, I love this. I get it. And when you watch a movie, you think, oh my God, this is scary. And it's hard. It's such a difficult thing. And sometimes it really is in the filming of it. And people like James Wan are really great at making things scary. And Mike Flanagan is great at making things scary. So I think you have to study those filmmakers, study the filmmakers that are really good at their craft, and try to, not copy them, but sort of emulate what they're doing.
Right. One of the you talked about some of the films that you've been making recently, and one I wanted to zero in on particularly was Reborn,
Mm-hmm.
which is 2018. I thought I really enjoyed that, and again, it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
tense, and
It's tense.
yeah,
Yes. I mean, if you don't have the scares, you have to have the tension. That's
yeah,
the other thing. And that's a very good point you bring up. If you don't have the scares, if you keep the tension there, that kind of bodes into thriller territory. That is as effective, really,
mm,
as something being scary. And that
yeah,
can work too.
yeah.
Mhm.
What? How much were you involved in the development of Reborn, or were you just playing a role on it?
I was just playing a role. And in fact, that was another case of they had another actress and something happened with her. And I knew the director of that film, and he called me on a Friday and he said, we need somebody to come in and take over this role. Can you be here on Monday? And I live in San Francisco, and it was shooting in Los Angeles. So I read the script that night and packed up my car and I drove right down there. So I read the script one time before I started filming it, and had to, learn the lines as quickly as possible. But I liked the script and I wanted to help my friend out. So I said, yes, I'll do it.
Wow. Wow. I'd never have known. I had you had so little preparation. So how long was the
Yeah.
shoot in that case?
Oh, I don't know. I think, well, we shot right before Christmas, and then we broke for Christmas for some weird reason. I don't know why. I think maybe because the other gal, you know, her not doing it set them back, and so they didn't have enough time to shoot everything before Christmas. So we shot for 2 weeks before Christmas, then we had 3 weeks off, and then we came back again. So I think I was better in the second half because I had more time to rehearse. But I was working a lot with Michael Pare on Reborn, and I had worked with him in the remake or the reimagining of Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich. So we were
Right.
friendly, and I really leaned on him for my part, and you know, talked with him a lot. And I remember one scene, I said, Michael, I have no idea how to play this scene. I'm really at a loss. Can we just talk this scene through? Can you talk with me about it? Can we discuss it so that I can kind of get in the mood and get in the feeling and the flow of it? Because I don't know how I'm going to play this. I have no, you know, I don't know. And you know, everybody has their process, right? And I'm a preparer. I do like to prepare. And I didn't have the time to prepare on this. I like to prepare, but then I like to be able to forget it. If something happens in the moment that comes to me, I feel free enough if I prepared enough that I can just go with whatever's happening. But I didn't have time to prepare, and I had to just go with whatever. I mean, basically the whole movie was go with whatever. And I just this one scene, I just, you know, it makes me nervous even to talk about it, because it's not a good feeling for me to feel like, oh, I don't know if I have a handle on this material yet. You know, I knew my lines, but I didn't know how to play it. So, I mean, part of what I had to do was play that I didn't know what I was doing or how to feel. I mean, that was what was really going on with me. And so I don't want to deny anything that's going on with me either. So that, you know, I just felt really at odds with myself
Right.
filming that whole movie.
Wow. Well, it doesn't come, I mean, it comes across as a woman who's still grieving after 16 years,
Mhm.
and naturally and understandably. So, and of course, you got to work with Monty Markham as you did on
Yes, and
Real.
you probably know Monty, right?
I've met him a
Do
couple of
you?
times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
such a
He's
lovely man.
so wonderful. And I had worked with him on We Are Still Here, a movie that I did in 2015, and I'm quite fond of him. He's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very funny. What I like about We Are Still Here is Monty Markham playing just out and out evil.
And so believable, right?
Yeah,
And then you watch him on The Golden Girls, and you know, he's such a sweet man on that. I mean, he's been in a million things, but he has a range, that guy. And you know, who, you know, I think as we get older, we do get to spread our wings a little bit sometimes, and people put us in these interesting roles that are against our type. And that was definitely against Monty's type. And he was so delicious playing an evil person.
yeah. He's great, absolutely wonderful. One of the other things I wanted to talk about was you have a column in Fangoria magazine
Hmm.
entitled "Scene Queen."
Yeah.
Which won an award. It won a
Hmm.
Rondo Award
Hmm.
last year. So congratulations on that. But
Thanks.
for people who've not had a chance to read it, can you tell us a little bit about the column, what it is you do in it?
Well, it started because the reason they asked me to write a column was because a number of years ago, somebody referred to me as a scream queen, which they do from time to time. And I don't know, I just had an issue with it in that moment, which I don't really prefer the term. I prefer actor. But
Yeah,
I put a tweet out there saying, you know, that when I do interviews and things, I usually tell people that, or I tell a publicist to tell the journalist, I really don't care for the term, so don't call me one, because I think it's kind of reductive and just doesn't really illuminate what women have been doing in these movies for so long, and the depth of the emotions of where we go and what we do and the travels that the characters take. And then two outlets asked me to write an article about it. And Fangoria asked me first, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I wrote an article. call me a scream queen. Actually, it was published on Birth Movies Death,
Right.
which is a defunct website now, but I think it's still available if people look it up. And I just talked about where the term came from, and just, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad for calling me that or calling other ladies that. I do think that it is a term that's used positively by most fans,
Mm,
and saying, this is our final girl, this is our queen,
mm,
and she's in a horror movie. And, but I feel like the narrative of what women do in films, especially in the horror genre, has come really far. And I just don't think it's illuminating of what we do. So anyway, I wrote that article, and then I asked 10 people or more to just give me their unabridged reaction to the term, and if they liked it and if they didn't. And some of the ladies were like, yeah, I don't mind the term at all. I think even Heather Langenkamp said, I don't mind, you can call me that. And other people, and then some women did. And I even talked to Edgar Wright about it, and he gave me a quote, and a lot of people in the business gave me quotes, and so that's up there too. And everybody can take from it what they will. But after writing that article, Fangoria said, would you consider having, doing a regular column and just writing about things in the horror genre from your point of view? So that's what I've been doing for the past 2.5 years. I just write about whatever.
right.
And it's just whatever comes to me, or whatever's happening in the news, or, something, I just write about it. So I continue to do that to this day. And it's really been fun.
Right. Right. It's interesting, isn't it? I think, having watched a lot of horror movies over the last few months, I think one of the negative aspects, as far as I'm concerned, is directors who only give female characters one reaction to terror, which is to scream at the top of the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, it's like, okay, the actors come through the door. Actually, I wouldn't scream. I'd win, there are
Yeah.
other reactions to fear.
No, yeah, it's not, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it
not,
becomes a trope,
it
basically.
is a trope for
Yeah.
sure. And I don't think you're right. I don't think it is that. Mostly when people are in fear, normally you're frozen in a
Mm,
way, because when you're fearful, it's hard to move. It's hard to breathe,
yeah.
and the screaming, I guess, it's an effect. Fay Ray did it wonderfully, being
The original, yeah.
in Kong's arms. But and Marilyn Burns, of course, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, screamed a lot in that film. I don't think it's the normal reaction. So, as films get more sophisticated, and viewers get more sophisticated, we see the range of emotions that,
Hmm.
in dealing with fear, that people go through.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's maybe a little more realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that primeval thing that I think they're trying to tap into. Just like, okay, yeah.
Hmm.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about particularly was Jacob's Wife, now which you both star and produce,
Hmm.
which premiered at South by Southwest earlier this month in March.
Yes. Hmm.
Yes, and the reviews I've seen are great. Somebody already saying
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely the horror movie of 2021 already, and I think that is quite an accolade. So tell
Yeah.
me, I know it's a long process, so please tell me a little bit about this process.
Well, again, it comes down to the writing and everything too. The original script was wonderful. It was in a screenplay contest at Shriekfest in Los Angeles, and it won an award for best screenplay. And at the time, when it was given to me, it was given to me by the original writer, Mark Steensland, and the fest director, because they knew that I was getting into producing a little bit. And they also thought that the lead character would be a good role for me. So I read it and I loved it. It's a vampire story. It's no secret now, so that's not a spoiler.
Right.
But the original script was about a man caring for his wife, and the metaphor was caring for a spouse that had like a terminal illness. And I thought, well, if I'm playing the part and I'm going to develop this as a project for myself, maybe it should be about something else. So we worked on changing it to be like a woman's awakening to herself, a sort of a, you know, like uh, like a woman finding herself, or a second half of her life, and it became more about the woman's agency and what she needed to look at in herself so that she could become a better person after being bitten by a vampire, because her husband is just more of a repressed pastor in this small town, and so they've lived this sort of sheltered life, and they haven't, either one of them, asked for more. So when this woman is bitten by a vampire and she has this new blood coursing through her veins and she craves more, it also changes how her husband views her and relates to her, and how she relates to him. So it was really more about a marriage story with, horror undertones. And so Mark did a few passes on it, and then we brought in a woman to do a few passes on it, and then it kept getting better and better all the time. And it took a couple of years to actually work on the script and get it to a place where we all felt like it was ready to bring to a director. And then we started talking to different directors, and ultimately went to Travis Stevens, who was one of the producers on We Are Still Here, who I knew, and
Yes.
had just come out with his first film that he directed, Girl on the Third Floor. And that it just happened at the right moment, because I wouldn't have even really considered him. But his movie came out and we thought, oh, well, we know Travis, we've worked with him before. Let's take it to him and let's watch his movie. And we all liked his movie, and he loved the material so much. So then he came on board, and then we were able to raise the money based on the package of myself and Larry Fessenden and Travis, and put the money, get the money together, and find a location to shoot in. And I had been working with this production company on the material for two years or so before we started filming. So quite a long time with them as well. So these things take time. They take time. Yeah.
Wow. What was your favorite moment during the filming?
Well, there's some really wonderful scenes in the movie, and one reviewer said, sometimes, you come away from a movie and you think, oh, if there's one or two really memorable scenes, that can kind of make the movie for you. And he said, and he either said a half a dozen or a dozen. I'm thinking he said a dozen, but that sounds like a lot. Anyway, he said many. There were many scenes in this film to him that were very memorable. And I think that's true. I like them. So there's one scene where I need blood and I'm hungry. So before I bite anybody else, I go to the supermarket and I get some blood from the meat counter, in the raw meat. And I take that home and I put it in a glass, and I'm drinking the blood and I'm dancing in my living room. And that was a really fun scene. And then there's another scene where I do bite somebody and kill them and drink their blood. And the blood is all over the kitchen. And I'm licking the blood up, and my husband comes in and finds me. And that's the first time he realizes that. I'm sorry, this is a little spoilery.
Sorry, spoilers.
Spoiler alert. And
I think it appears in the trailer.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
it does.
In the trailer.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It does. It does.
Yeah,
so,
we're okay.
Yeah. So if people are watching this, they've probably already watched the trailer for that, if they're big horror fans. So he finds me and he says it. And then I say, oh, sorry, Jake, if it wasn't me. And he goes, of course it was you. And then I go, well, maybe it was, I don't know. Anyway, that was really fun. We have some very, very fun movie moments, I'll say, that I hope the fans will also think are memorable when the movie comes out.
Right. And when is it? So it's done its premiere at the festival. What are the plans for distribution? When will people be able to see it?
Yeah, it's coming out April 16th. Is it April 16th? From RLJE Films.
Right.
And their parent company is AMC, and then below them is also Shudder.
Right.
So I believe that it's going to come to Shudder eventually, but it will be available on VOD and digital platforms, and in some theaters on April
Right.
16th in America. And I
Right.
don't know when it's going to be in some other countries, but soon, very soon after
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Something for people to keep an
Mhm.
eye out for.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you've got Creepshow season 2. You've got an episode of that
Mhm.
coming out, and
Yeah.
Shudder coming. Any idea when that's going to be screened?
Yeah. Well, April 1st, I believe, is their first
Right.
episode. I'm in the second or third. I think I'm in the third one.
Right.
So I'll be in
Right.
the third week. But people are already clamoring for this series. The first season was so great, and it's Greg Nicotero as the showrunner for the whole thing, and he has his special effects team on it, and I mean he's one of the masters of the business, and all the special effects for. I've seen a couple of the episodes, and when I was there filming, they were setting up for other episodes, and I know some of the special effects guys, especially one guy worked on From Beyond, and actually
Wow.
Greg worked on From Beyond as well. So I was chatting with them, and they were showing me some of the other creatures for the other episodes, and the stuff is amazing. It's just, I mean, it's next level. So I think people are going to be really excited and delighted by what they have in store for the fans in season 2.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, look forward
Yeah.
to it. Yeah, I don't think we can get it over here, but I'll get to see it at some point, I'm sure.
Well, it's on Shudder, so you get Shudder
Oh, well, yes, of course
in
we
the
get Shudder.
UK.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Duh.
Yeah, you'll get it.
Yeah, it's one of those many streaming things. I really need to
Mhm.
get back onto that. So I'd
Yeah.
just like to end with my set questions, which I title The Luggage in the Crypt. So kind of getting a feel of some things that you might take into the afterlife with you, if I may. So
Mhm.
start off with a film. What sort of film might you choose?
Hmm. I'd probably take The Wizard of Oz with me. It's one of my favorite
Right.
movies. The theme of that film is happiness is in your own backyard. And that's a theme that kind of sticks with me. No matter where you go, there you are. You have to take everything you are with you. And it's a very colorful, beautiful, fun movie. So I'll take that one over the rainbow into the beyond with me.
That's a great choice. I'm sure somebody else mentioned that as well. I have to go back and
Really?
double. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, fairly early on. I'll have to double check
Ah,
my list of notes. What about a book?
a book. Um, Maybe I would take Stephen King's On Writing
Ah,
because I have to have something to do, and
ah,
I could hone my writing skills. But also in reading that book, it's always by my bedside table, and I refer to a lot because I do think that writing and acting and editing, all that stuff is the same. It's the same. It has the same components of the how-tos of how to do things and how to showcase a moment or a feeling or a character, an emotion or an idea. And I actually refer to that book a lot when I'm, for acting, because
right.
I think it works hand in hand.
I guess it's storytelling at
Yeah,
its
it's storytelling. You're
yeah,
right. It
yeah,
is. It
yeah.
is. Yes, and as an actor, you're right. That's a good point. You have to be a storyteller when you're an
Mm,
actor. And sometimes, even when I'm playing a part and something's not there,
mm,
that I think, is something missing here? Do I not have enough information? Then I might have to infuse something on the part, or just a little
mm.
something little
Yeah,
that's maybe just in my mind
yeah,
that I can
yeah,
illuminate the character. So it is, yeah, sometimes
yeah,
it's
yeah,
I can take little clues from that book.
yeah. What about an album? Some music to listen to.
Um, Maybe one of the Beatles albums, because I don't know, that's when I don't know which one, but when I was first really learning about music, I mean, I had older sisters and brothers. They were all about 10 years older than
Yeah,
me. And so when they were really getting into music and I was really little, that was the music they were playing. And anything Beatles, I listen to and it makes me feel happy. Makes me feel like nostalgic for a time when all of us were home. I'm one of 5 children and everybody was older than me and just, we were all together and it was nice. So anything Beatles really.
You just reminded me that, yeah, I think one of the first singles my brother ever bought was Yellow Submarine.
Mhm.
And yeah, I
It's a
immediately,
great song. I
it's a great
mean,
song. And on the
yeah.
flip side is Eleanor Rigby. It's a wonderful contrast,
Mhm.
the two. What about favorite food or drink?
Favorite food or drink? Well, my favorite food that I could never live without is potato chips. I love potato chips, crisps, as you would
Yes,
call them.
yes,
I'm crazy for crisps. So I can't really go anywhere, especially into the afterlife, without my crisps. And as far as a drink, I would have to take with me Sancerre. That's my favorite white wine is the
right,
Sancerre. So I'll take that
right,
with me.
right.
Yeah.
And what favor potato chips?
Well, any kind really will do. I like them all. The thin light ones, the crisp ones, the flavored ones. I was
Right.
in France a couple of years ago and they had chicken and tomato potato chips.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, they were amazing. They tasted like chicken and tomato and potato. I felt like I was eating a little meal, you know. That was crazy. We don't have as many crazy flavors over here as they do other places. When I go other places, I feel like
Yeah.
other
We,
countries make crazier flavors.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What? Yeah.
I remember at one stage we had baked hedgehog in this country as a crisp. I don't think you can get it any longer. But
Oh, maybe not enough people went for
yeah,
that one. That might be going a little too far.
yeah, just a
Baked
little too
hedgehog.
weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about a piece of visual art? A painting, a landscape, or a statue, or
Mm. Well, I guess I like Matisse a lot. I like the look of, the blue, the colors, the blue color and the kind of wavy sort of surrealistic lines of things. I find his work very calming and interesting at the same time.
right.
The cutouts, I really like the Matisse cutouts. They did a really nice exhibit of that I think was going around the world a couple of years ago. And I went 3 times to see it. Just to look at these big cutouts that were in the rooms, just the shapes and everything were,
Yes,
the big shapes were just beautiful to look at.
it's the figures dancing in the circle is one of my
Mhm,
favorites, and
mhm,
yeah, yeah. I get Matisse. Love Matisse as well.
mhm.
And what about a luxury? Just something else that just makes your life more comfortable, more pleasurable.
My sparkling water maker. I I am long time married, and I've told my husband my most favorite thing is the ring that he gave me
Uh-huh.
and my sparkling water maker, because I love him, and this is sparkly. And my sparkling water maker, I can't live without bubbly water. I don't like flat water, and I don't drink soda. I don't
Right,
drink anything sugary, but I just love plain ultra sparkling water. So I can't live without my sparkling water maker.
right,
Mm.
right. Yes, it's so refreshing. I get that. Yeah, I was talking about those the other day. We don't have one, but yeah, brilliant.
Wow.
Soda stream. We're talking about the
A
old-fashioned,
soda stream.
the good
Well, actually,
old-fashioned.
they call them soda stream now
Oh, right,
too. It
right.
is called a soda stream.
Yeah, yeah, because I was
Yeah.
thinking of that it used to be the sort of the 1930s style with the thing that used to twist the canister into, and
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
This is what I associate with that. Barbara, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you,
today. This
Nick.
has been wonderful.
It's lovely talking with you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Well, take care of yourself, and hopefully, where can people find out about what you're up to. Twitter, you mentioned.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. Mostly I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I don't really do Facebook as much anymore. I don't
Right,
know. Just everybody gets too angry. They get angry on Twitter too, but I kind of keep to myself and just do my own thing there. And
right.
then on Instagram, yeah.
My thanks again to Barbara Crampton. What a lovely lady and fascinating stories. Join me next week on the Chattering Hour, and in the meantime, stay safe and well.